let's have a look over this team right here.
So on Eric's side of the field, we have got, he's running a Celesteela, Hariyama, Gyarados, Alola Marowak, Nihilego and Tapu Koko, whereas Javier is opting to bring a Whimsicott, Metagross, Garchomp, Tapu Fini, Tapu Bulu and Arcanine.
So a really interesting choice from Javier with that Whimsicott. It looks like it could be running Nature Power based on the two Island Guardian Pokemon that he ran on his team, but he might be using a Z Nature Power set that we saw similar to Ryota Otsubo from Japan. But with Eric's side of the field, there are options that he has to deal with this. Gyarados in a good position to put some good pressure onto that Arcanine, and dependent on the set, if it has like a Flyneum Z, then we could be seeing a Supersonic Sky Strike to be able to deal with that Tapu Bulu as well. So a really interesting set of matchups here. With Celesteela on Eric's side of the field as well, he has the option to be able to slow the game down into his own pace. If he can deal with that Arcanine quickly, he has the Nihilego for that as well. So there are options, if he can get rid of this Arcanine, there are options for his Celesteela to really take control of the game.
Definitely, Nihilego as well, one of those Pokemon that we've seen rise up in popularity lately, as it does sort of tackle some of the main cores in the format at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see if it does get brought in this game. Eric, however, is not bringing it as one of his leads. He is bringing Celesteela and Tapu Koko, whereas Javier has opted for Tapu Fini and Arcanine onto the field. So Arcanine firing off its powerful Intimidate into Celesteela and Tapu Koko there.
Yeah, so Tapu Fini doing well to override the electric terrain here and reduce the amount of damage that Tapu Koko can do. And with the Tapu Fini going after the Tapu Koko, we know that there's no Choice Scarf involved in this matchup. So Tapu Koko in a position where it probably wants to either Volt Switch out to be able to maintain its electric terrain for later on in the match, and Celesteela really heavily threatened by this Arcanine. So you'd imagine that Celesteela is wanting to protect or switch out itself. If Tapu Koko can find itself in a position to get off some massive damage against this Arcanine and control it, then Celesteela can come back in and start to do some big work.
Indeed, some Pokemon are really heavily threatened here. As you mentioned, the Celesteela is really threatened by the Arcanine, but also that Tapu Fini is threatened by the Tapu Koko. So it's going to be really interesting to see if any of the trainers here are going to decide to recall their Pokemon and switch around their ball position just to gain advantage going into the next turn. Tapu Koko's decided it's not going to hang around in this first turn. It's going to leave the field, switching out for the Gyarados, which is going to deal an Intimidate back to the Arcanine and Tapu Fini there. Tapu Fini not too worried about taking the Intimidate, but Arcanine may not be appreciating it. Tapu Fini as well leaves the field for Javier, and in comes that elusive Whimsicott. So Whimsicott has now hit the field.
Lovely Pokemon, one of my favourites of all time.
It really is quite an adorable little Pokemon, isn't it? Arcanine firing off a powerful Flip into that Gyarados slot, so great switch there from Eric. It's not going to be dealing too much damage, a little bit of recall to the Arcanine though, as Celesteela...
goes to the Leech Seed there. So the Leech Seed on Celesteela. Eric playing fast and loose with his Celesteela there, understanding that if he gets the Intimidate onto that Arcanine, he'll be able to survive a Flare Blitz. So okay with just setting up a Leech Seed in case Tapu Fini wants to switch out, but very, very nice play from Javier there to be able to maintain his terrain options going into the next turn. With Tapu Koko leaving the field once again, we have the option for some more switching coming out, but Gyarados in a position where it can threaten some big damage onto that Arcanine. And also, it is a red Gyarados here, so it could have access to Bounce and then be able to use a Flyneum Z to be able to deal some massive damage to this Whimsicott. And if we are to look at the way that Javier's team's constructed, if it's carrying a Z Nature Power attack, it might not be able to survive with a Focus Sash.
Indeed, that Gyarados, however, doesn't hang on the field for too long, switches back out for the Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko and Gyarados liking to sort of switch it up here a little bit, returning the electric terrain to the field. Arcanine switching out as well for Javier, and that brings the Tapu Fini back. So these terrains, electric terrain one moment, misty terrain the next, so a really good switch there from Javier to get rid of that electric terrain that Tapu Koko would have loved. Whimsicott here is
going for a Charm.
Charm into that Celesteela, so it's going to lower the stats out on Celesteela. Goes for a Leech Seed into that Tapu Fini, so it's going to be regaining a little bit of health there at the end of the turn.
Yeah, Eric really unafraid to use his Celesteela in this matchup, and the Charm is a really, really interesting option on Javier's side. So maybe he was predicting a switch in on the Celesteela side, possibly into like a Marowak to be able to resist the Arcanine's damage and also threaten that Whimsicott once again. But Celesteela in a position where it's got this Leech Seed up now, it doesn't really need to use its attack. It's still going to do massive damage to Whimsicott with a Heavy Slam because Whimsicott is so light. Tapu Koko now, without its terrain once again, doesn't really, it's still just going to stick in though.
It goes for an Encore here onto that Celesteela, so Celesteela is going to be locked into Leech Seed going forward. And we see a Nature's Madness come out from the Tapu Koko into that Whimsicott, going to deal 50% HP to it, as Tapu Fini fires off a Scald into that Tapu Koko, going to do decent damage there, taking about a third HP, and obviously the Leech Seed there is going to fail, as Whimsicott won't be affected by it, and Tapu Fini's already had Leech Seed.
Yeah, so a good turn there for Javier to be able to lock that Celesteela down and limit its options. With the Leech Seed already onto Tapu Fini, it can't do anything to Whimsicott there, won't be able to get any attacks off. Celesteela in a position where it's not really threatened damage-wise, but its options are very extremely limited, can't protect, and probably will want to switch out, imagining that Javier's team is going to be starting to bring in that Arcanine once again to threaten it. But with Tapu Koko again on the field, revealing the option for the Nature's Madness puts a lot of matchups into Eric's favour moving into the rest of the match. It does also make you wonder what item this Tapu Koko is running. Nature's Madness usually indicative of something like an Assault Vest.
Definitely, Nature's Madness is one of those moves we don't often see on Tapu Koko, but it does often reveal Assault Vest. We do see Metagross join the field here. Celesteela is leaving it, so one Steel type joins the field as another one leaves, and Gyarados does come back into play for Eric, so Intimidate not going to be coming off onto this Metagross, thanks to its ability. Yeah,
the clear body, really beautiful there. A lot of the trainers are using it now, and that was a Nature Power going to convert into Moonblast to deal some massive damage to Tapu Koko.
Really good damage there coming onto Tapu Koko. It goes for a Thunderbolt into Metagross, does about a third health, but thanks to that Misty Terrain, it's not going to be getting the boost that it would have had from its own Electric Terrain, so not dealing as much damage as Tapu Koko would have wanted. Nice
switch in for Gyarados here. It doesn't get the Intimidate off onto Metagross because of Clear Body, but it was trying to threaten a little bit of damage if an Arcanine came in on the switch to try and lock down on some damage onto that Celesteela. So Arcanine can't come in for free here, and if Gyarados has the Waterium Z, it could do some big damage to Metagross as well, and Tapu Koko going to outspeed that slot as well. So Whimsicott being able to get some nice damage off with Moonblast, Tapu Koko not taking too much there, so it could be, again, indicative of that Assault Vest. Whimsicott with the priority attacks looking really nice here, just to be able to start throwing out some damage to make sure that Tapu Koko can't stick around for too long.
Tapu Koko once again leaves the field, and we see Eric bring back in his Celesteela, facing down the Metagross and the Whimsicott. Gyarados simply just goes for a Protect on this turn, doesn't want to take any damage, and we do finally see a Z move come out here. It's going to be the Normalium Z. Coming out from that Whimsicott, so I think this is going to be Z Nature Power.
Yeah, Z Nature Power going to do some big damage here, unless it's going to go into that Protect, or it's going to go into that Celesteela. So, unfortunately, not the turn that Javier really wanted to use this attack, so it is going to go into that Gyarados through the Protect, not going to be doing the full amount of damage that he would have wanted here. Still a nice little bit of chip damage, but Gyarados are able to stick around for yet another turn. We're going to see the Meteor Mash coming out from the Metagross. Sorry, the Bullet Punch coming out from the Metagross onto the Celesteela here.
So priority moves coming out very strong from Javier's side of the field there. Bullet Punch not really doing too much at all to Celesteela there, just a little bit of chip. But it's always exciting to see those Z moves come out, particularly that adorable little Twinkle Tackle from Whimsicott.
Yeah, and now Gyarados in a position where it can probably survive a Moonblast here and threaten some big damage onto that Metagross slot if it wants to. Arcanine going to come in really nicely to lower the physical damage that Gyarados can do.
Great switch in here from Javier. He's going to get Intimidate onto that Gyarados and Celesteela, who both certainly will not appreciate it. And we do see the Z move as well come out from Eric, so finally the Z moves are coming out, and just as you predicted there, Jay, it's going to be the Flynium Z Crystal Z move coming out from Gyarados.
That's one of the things about the Gyarados. If they're red, they have the option to go for this Flynium Z. They could also have Waterium Z, so it was very important for Javier to figure out which one would be being dealt with here. And going into that Arcanine, this could do some real nice damage. It's at -1, but it's still going to do a lot. Z-moons are very powerful, and it takes it down to just under half HP.
Does some good damage there, but thanks to that Intimidate, it's really not going to be dealing as much as Gyarados would have liked. Metagross there, picking up a Leech Seed from the opposing Celesteela. His leftovers are going off as well, so it's going to boost itself right back up to full HP at the end of this turn.
Yeah, so Metagross also missing a Zen Headbutt in that turn, so not being able to get some damage off onto the Celesteela or onto the Gyarados there. I unfortunately missed which target it was going for. But Gyarados, again, in a position where it can threaten this Arcanine or the Metagross here. No Pokemon are protected on Javier's side of the field. Javier might want to try and bring in his Tapu Fini into one of these slots to protect the Arcanine and switch in Tapu Fini to get a resisted hit from the Waterfall coming out from Gyarados. But if Eric reads into this and possibly boosts up with a Dragon Dance on the Gyarados here, he could be in a nice position. Celesteela obviously not liking the position in front of Arcanine, so might want to protect or switch out, but we've only seen Tapu Koko come in from Eric's side of the field, and he wouldn't want to be taking a flare blitz.
No, Tapu Koko would definitely not be appreciating that. I think you're right, would be a good time for Gyarados to go for a Dragon Dance, and we'll just have to see if it does go for that indeed. Arcanine leaving the field, bringing back that Tapu Fini. Misty Terrain is going to go off once again, brings that back onto the field, gets rid of the green background at the moment, and we have the beautiful Misty Terrain back once again. Gyarados, however, deciding to not go for any moves this turn, goes for a Protect, not wanting to take any damage, as Metagross also goes for Protect, so now we just need to see what the Celesteela is going to do. And it goes for...
That's a Flamethrower right there.
Flamethrower there. Good Spanish there you're picking up there, Jay.
my Spanish reading doing all right, but yeah, my Spanish speaking not so much. But this is an interesting interaction now that Metagross is being slowly worn away by this Leech Seed. Javier in a position where he's kind of pinned in that slot. If Gyarados attacks into that slot, Metagross most likely will go down here. If Arcanine comes in, it will take significant damage. Well, Gyarados being at -1 is a big roll as well here, so Arcanine coming in into one of these slots will be able to remove any boost that a Dragon Dance might give for Gyarados. Also, Whimsicott in the back makes Eric probably wonder about having a Dragon Dance at all. So Flamethrower gonna do some good pressure onto Metagross as well. Maybe we'll see the Arcanine going into that slot, but we actually just see a switch out from Gyarados.
So Gyarados is leaving the field. We do see a Fire-type join the field though in its replacement, and it is the Alolan Marowak. Metagross also leaving the field, and it's that Arcanine, just as you said there, Jay. So Arcanine going to fire off and Intimidate onto this Marowak and Celesteela. Marowak, a Pokemon that definitely does not appreciate having its attack stat lowered.
Yeah, and then we see the Scald coming out from the Tapu Fini here. So we're going to go into that Celesteela, do some nice damage. No burn though, but speaking of burning options, we have the Flamethrower once again going into that Metagross slow. Arcanine eating it up, loving to take those Fire-type attacks.
Definitely, that was a great switch from Javier there, bringing in the Arcanine to take that Flamethrower. Flamethrower is one of those moves that is sort of a staple on Celesteela at the moment. It's really good for taking down other Celesteelas. Obviously Kartana is a really big choice for that Flamethrower move as well. So it's a really good switch there that you brought in that Arcanine to eat it up, so his Metagross is going to be safe in the next couple of turns.
Yeah, and Marowak not liking the position it's in here. The Scald being revealed on Tapu Fini means that it either has to protect or switch out once again, otherwise it's going to go down here. Arcanine, Gyarados could come in here to, again, drop another Intimidate onto this Arcanine. It doesn't take too much damage from Tapu Fini, but it doesn't want to take a Moonblast into that slot either. With Celesteela on the field being threatened by that Arcanine, a lot of mind games for Eric here. Which Pokemon does he protect?
I think it's definitely wise for him to be switching out here, and that Gyarados will be coming back onto the field for Eric, putting off another Intimidate. It's just Intimidates across this whole game, coming out from the Arcanine, coming out from the Gyarados. So Intimidate's just going to go off into the Arcanine and Tapu Fini. It'll be interesting to see what they do go for. Celesteela protecting itself up from that opposing Arcanine, not wanting to take any Flare Blitzes. And Arcanine does target down the Celesteela, so that protect's going to save Celesteela this turn, as Tapu Fini fires off another powerful Scald into that Gyarados. Doesn't pick up a burn or anything. I mean, Gyarados is a flying Pokemon, so it's not going to be affected by that Misty Terrain. So Gyarados is now looking quite good in this position. Yeah,
really threatening some good damage onto that Arcanine. It is out of any Pinch Berry range, so if it is carrying one of those berries, it will boost its HP back up once it gets into a pinch. Gyarados will just be able to knock it out straight from that point. With switching options, Metagross again would not like taking any damage if it switched in, so Arcanine might want to just protect here, or go into Whimsicott, which again is quite damaged here. Tapu Fini in a position where it's been throwing out Scalds. It could just be fishing for some significant damage onto that Gyarados and maybe trying to get the burn to put himself in a position to do better damage later on. Celesteela again might want to retreat just because of the Arcanine, but Arcanine feeling very threatened and goes into that Whimsicott.
Whimsicott once again coming back onto the field. We do keep seeing these Gyarados and Arcanines leaving the field. Gyarados deciding to go for a Protect here, not wanting to take any damage from that Tapu Fini or the Arcanine, as Tapu Fini goes for a Scald into Celesteela, going to do a huge amount of damage there, and it does also pick up the burn, so that's really, really crucial there. Does fire off a Flamethrower, not too affected by the burn, into the Whimsicott slot, and it actually does pick up the KO there, so Whimsicott has been KO'd there.
Some very good plays coming out from both players right now. So we see the special defense boost coming out from that Celesteela, and it's got yeah, it's got some nice options with the Flamethrower to be able to deal some damage to this Metagross. Gyarados being the fastest Pokemon on the field at this point also threatens both Arcanine and the Metagross if they can't choose to come in. With the Tapu Fini choosing to target down that Celesteela was very, very key. The burn will do some nice work due to the longevity and the residual damage that you take from a burn. And Tapu Fini in a position where it can throw out Scalds into either slot. Metagross might want to protect here, just to stop itself from being knocked out by a potential waterfall. But Celesteela it will get knocked out due to burn, at least from the Scald from Tapu Fini, and there's no real good switch-ins for Eric's side of the field, so maybe he might want to let one of these Pokemon go down here.
Definitely, just so he can maybe reevaluate his ball position and get himself into a stronger position going into the next turn. Celesteela, although it is heavily damaged and burnt, if it wants to maybe start firing off some Leech Seeds here, it could put it into a good position to start gaining some health. Tapu Fini deciding to leave the field for that Arcanine once again, so Arcanine firing off more Intimidates onto the field. I think two of the really key Pokemon in this game have been that Gyarados and Arcanine. Obviously Arcanine heavily threatened by Gyarados, but it's just been so nimble coming in and out of these games. Yeah. Gyarados is going for a waterfall though into it. Arcanine has not outsmarted it this turn, and so Arcanine will be KO'd by the waterfall from that Gyarados.
Lovely play.
Metagross going for another Zen Head, but this time it does connect onto that Gyarados, and it will pick up a KO as well. So sort of changing the Pokemon here across the board.
Yeah, and a Flamethrower just coming out to round out this turn. Metagross going to take some nice damage here and get the knockout. Yeah, so really...
That was an insane turn. Yep. Absolutely crazy. Lots of Pokemon getting KO'd, and Celesteela getting another special defense beast boost. It's sitting there on the field all by itself, very proud. None of its opposing Pokemon are there to threaten it. That was just such a dynamic turn. Yeah, a very explosive turn there. Lots of knockouts, as you said, Lou. And I think the key point for Eric there, didn't protect with either Pokemon. Didn't really care. So if one of the Pokemon went down, he had the position to get Tapu Koko into the field with his own terrain. So Arcanine coming in as a switch in was quite nice to try and make sure that any electric terrain that would come in later on could be overridden with the Misty terrain, but Eric saw right through it, got the knockout onto that Arcanine slot. Marowak coming in here again, so Tapu Koko can have its electric terrain up and really threaten some massive damage onto Tapu Fini later in the game. Definitely, and poor Tapu Fini here. It's Tapu Fini against the world, and we do know that Eric has that Tapu Koko in the back as well. So possibly here, Javier might be sort of thinking how he's going to go into game 2. But for the moment, Marowak does its little fiery dance and goes for a Protect. Tapu Fini does target down that Marowak, but unfortunately it does go into Protect with the Muddy Water. It will connect, however, on the Celesteela, does good amount of damage there, and also gets the Actuary Drop, which, you know, can always change things in a game. But unfortunately for Javier, the Leech Seed does connect onto Tapu Fini. Yeah, so not what Javier wanted to see there. The Leech Seed missing would have been really nice for him, but he's in such a tough spot. That Tapu Koko waiting in the back is going to be a big deal. Marowak protecting doesn't really matter too much. We've got to see how Celesteela with this Leech Seed now in a position where we've seen it can survive a Muddy Water already. It's just going to be sitting there retrieving HP back with no options for Javier to switch out, and that Tapu Koko waiting about. He must just be thinking about trying to get as much information about how much damage his moves are going to do to Eric's Pokemon before going into game 2. Definitely, it's a good moment to try and play that information game and see what information you can take into game 2. Celesteela there going for a Protect as Tapu Fini targets it down again, goes into Protect, and Tapu Fini's Muddy Water is going to connect onto the Marowak, so it'll be good information here for Javier to see how much that does. It does a huge amount of damage, taking it right down into the red, but Marowak does respond with a Shadow Bone, again doing good damage and getting the drop there as well. Yeah, so really nice for Marowak to be able to survive that Muddy Water there, and that's good information for Eric going into the next game, knowing that Marowak can, if it gets into a situation like this once again, Marowak can survive one. Yes, exactly, and that puts a lot of good physical damage in his favour going into the end turns of the game, if he can keep that Marowak around. Obviously, Marowak is mostly there to threaten Tapu Bulu and Whimsicott and the Metagross, so having it in the back at that point wasn't so necessary because he managed to get rid of those threats, but it's going to be an interesting Pokemon to keep around for the next couple of games. Definitely, and as you can see there, Eric did pick up the win in game 1, so huge congratulations to him, and all of that and crazy information towards the end of the game. Hopefully Javier will be able to sort of relax, take all that information on board and adapt in game 2. That's what we like to see from our trainers here in the Pokemon Video Game Championship Series. Mentioned it before, and having a clear head going into the second game of a best of 3, or even after taking a match loss in the first round of the tournament or early rounds, you want to try and make sure that you can keep calm, carry on, compose, exactly, and come straight back into it. And Javier is one of those players. He's got enough experience behind his belt. He should be able to do this. So you could see him as well in good spirits, sort of chuckling away there with Eric. So I think the two of them are quite good friends as well. So yeah, this should be a good game. They've played many times before, so this is not a matchup that either of them are unlikely to forget. But let's go into team preview once again, Lou. So just to recap on the teams, we have got for Eric the Celesteela, Hariyama, Gyarados, Alola Marowak, Nihilego and Tapu Koko. And on Javier's side of the field you have that Whimsicott, Metagross, Garchomp, Tapu Fini, Tapu Bulu and Arcanine.
Yeah, we saw how important that Gyarados was to Eric's strategies, and revealing the Supersonic Sky Strike is also very important here because Tapu Bulu is quite still heavily threatened if Javier wanted to switch up that style. I don't really see Eric needing to switch up his Pokemon too much here. He had quite a good matchup against all the Pokemon that Javier could bring. Having the option to use Water-type damage onto the Garchomp should Javier decide to bring it could be interesting. Celesteela has usually a good matchup against Garchomp as well. He managed to deal with the Arcanine, and that's the main problem with for Celesteela not to win the game. So again, I think Eric just really wants to go for the same game plan. For Javier, maybe he had some good options to be able to deal with Eric's team. Maybe the Whimsicott being able to put out some more Encores could really help him find the space he needs to get some big damage off. But again, the Gyarados with that particular Z move, really threatening against Tapu Bulu, really threatening against Arcanine with some big neutral damage, and also just Waterfall does massive super directed damage. Waterfall does really good damage to Metagross as well. Lots of really nice neutral hits for Gyarados.
I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there. Javier's Arcanine was quite key in that game, and as soon as Eric managed to get rid of that, which threatened his Celesteela, he was able to sort of set up and go through the rest of the team. Eric, however, has switched up. He has brought that Nihilego paired up with his Celesteela as leads in this game too, and Javier has brought his Arcanine and his Tapu Fini. So really cool to see Nihilego join the field here. I
love Nihilego. Nihilego is so good with its super effective damage in Poison type and in Rock type. It loves being in this position right here, threatening damage onto Tapu Fini and onto Arcanine. And as you mentioned, Lou, Arcanine being such a key Pokemon for Javier in this matchup against Celesteela, Nihilego in a big position to start throwing out some damage onto it. He needs to be careful though. Nihilego will not want to take too much damage from like a Scald, so he switches out instead.
Definitely, Nihilego is heavily threatened by quite a lot of Javier's team, not so much from this lead, but it's deciding to preserve itself, switches out, and we see that Gyarados come back once again. So I think it's going to be another game of Intimidate here, Jay. Arcanine also leaving the field for the Garchomp on Javier's side, so he's bringing that Garchomp into game 2, he's adjusted his strategy a little bit here. Tapu Fini firing off a Scald into that Gyarados slot, not going to be dealing too much damage, and doesn't pick up a burn here, as Celesteela goes for a flamethrower into that Tapu Fini, so not too much damage being dealt out this turn, but some good ball position switches. Yeah, maybe Eric was reading into a potential switch into the Whimsicott here, just to try and just trap him in case he went for a Leech Seed like in game 1. So again, a similar turn for Eric where he switched in that Gyarados just to be able to neutralize some of the attack damage from Arcanine, but Javier reading into that and bringing Garchomp instead, so a nice switch there. But the Flamethrower, yeah, probably was just trying to pick up a potential Whimsicott switch in case it wanted to try and Encore into a Leech Seed, which is what Eric did in the first game. So Gyarados in a position here where it can do some nice damage against Garchomp. If it's got a boosting move, it would be a good time to use it. Celesteela in a position where if it protects itself this turn from any potential Fire Fangs from Garchomp, it can also threaten a Whimsicott coming in next turn. Indeed, the players definitely taken their time there to think about their moves. They're really focused in this game. We see the Tapu Fini switch out for Javier, and in comes the Arcanine. So again, Intimidate's being dealt left, right and centre in this game. Garchomp is going for a Rock Slide. Now this is one of the moves that we see Garchomp do so often. Does pick up really good damage on the Gyarados there, as we see the Z move come out, and it's going to be that Flying Z again coming out from Gyarados. So he's going to be targeting down one of these Pokemon. I'm not sure which one it's going to be. Which do you think, Jay? I think it'll probably be that Tapu Fini slot. Just some nice physical damage going into what is a very specially defensive Pokemon. Instead, it's going to be into that Garchomp. So just to try and get as much damage onto it as possible. Gyarados is at -1 here, and look how much damage that does regardless. That's over half its HP there. Celesteela free just well, actually just flinched this turn, so it doesn't get any damage off or set itself up in any particular way, but it's still not taking too much damage from that Garchomp's Rock Slide. But now Arcanine on the field really threatens Celesteela once again. So we could potentially be seeing a switch out from Celesteela, but again, it depends on what Pokemon Eric brought to this match. Nihilego doesn't want to take an Earthquake, but Gyarados obviously would. If Javier went for an Earthquake, Nihilego would take massive damage. If Marowak came in, it would take massive damage. Garchomp instead just going to be leaving here just to keep the threat of the Earthquake in for later on. Definitely, Garchomp's done its thing, flinching the Celesteela there, so it's leaving the field for the Tapu Fini, and we see Tapu Koko come in for Eric as well, so going to bring its electric terrain onto the field there, put itself into a really strong position. Arcanine is also being recalled by Javier, and he's going to send out the Whimsicott, so really adjusting his ball position here at the end of this turn. Celesteela just going for a protect here, so a turn where no damage was being dealt out, but some more ball position changes going on, so that was a really interesting turn.
Yeah, so protect failing there because there were no attack moves being done this turn. But Whimsicott in a position where it can encore Celesteela into protect, so you imagine Celesteela will just be switching out here to avoid that. Tapu Fini not liking the position it's in with the Tapu Koko being able to draw out some massive damage. Whimsicott also with Z Nature Power, what am I saying? Z Nature Power could do some massive damage to Celesteela or anything coming into that slot. So Tapu Fini switching out to try and maintain its terrain location for later on, and Arcanine coming in instead. Arcanine
coming back in once again for Javier. We haven't seen Celesteela. Oh, yeah, Celesteela is going to switch out as well. I think that's a really safe choice there by Eric, as it's really heavily threatened by something that Whimsicott could do. And the Nihilego comes back onto the field. Whimsicott here just goes for a Tailwind, so revealing that on Javier's side of the field, going to boost all the speeds there. As Tapu Koko goes for a Thunderbolt into that Arcanine slot. In the electric terrain as well, that should be doing a huge amount of damage, and it takes it down to almost 50%.
Yeah, with that damage output, you'd imagine Tapu Koko is wearing the Assault Vest here. We talked about it before with the amount of survival it had. Nihilego in a nice position here, but the Whimsicott throwing out the Tailwind is really good as well. So being able to make Arcanine threaten some big damage onto Tapu Koko before being knocked out by a Power Gem from the Nihilego, yeah, exactly. And Whimsicott being able to switch out or protect itself and bring in the Tapu Fini and set up the Misty Terrain once again to override Tapu Koko's damage output. But Nihilego, again, needs to be able to throw out some damage here to be able to make this work.
Definitely, and we see Tapu Koko leave the field for that Gyarados, so Gyarados coming back in, going to be intimidating that Arcanine once again. These two Pokemon just keep meeting on this field, throwing Intimidates at each other and lowering their attack stats. Whimsicott is actually going...
Oh, that's really clever.
That was brilliant. It goes for the Nature Power there, going into the Nihilego. Doesn't do too much damage as Arcanine goes for a Bulldoze, so Javier coming out really strong on the speeds here. Lowering the speed of Whimsicott and the Nihilego, not going to be affecting Gyarados though, as it is flying up in the air. And we see Sludge Bomb come out from that Nihilego, returned into the Whimsicott, and it does pick up the KO there.
Yeah, so the survival of Nihilego this turn was very, very good in the fact that it was able to threaten that knockout onto the Whimsicott. The Life Orb being revealed there as well. Didn't really matter in that interaction. It is 4 times super effective against a Grass and Fairy. But didn't go for the obvious attack onto the Arcanine here. Still managed to get some nice damage onto that Whimsicott, which would have threatened with a Z Nature Power into that Gyarados this turn. And with Tailwind still up, there's a Rock Slide potential coming out here, and Arcanine should be able to deal off with this Gyarados as well. And the switching options for Eric is looking pretty bleak.
Definitely, I think getting rid of that Whimsicott was a really, really good decision. As you said, it threatened so much with the Z Nature Power there. Garchomp coming into the field, and I don't believe we've had Garchomp's item revealed either. And it's one of those Pokemon that runs so many different sets, so it'll be interesting to see what item it is running. We see the Celesteela come back onto the field for Eric. Nihilego going for a Protect here, doesn't want to take any damage coming out from that Garchomp, which does heavily threaten it, as Garchomp goes simply for another Rock Slide. So that's going to connect onto the Celesteela for some good damage. Well, she doesn't do as much as I would have thought, so does a little bit of chip there on Celesteela, and Nihilego there, not going to be affected by Arcanine's attack, seeing as it's got the Protect up.
Yeah, that Flare Blitz not doing anything to Nihilego due to the Protect. And yeah, the Leaf Seed coming, the leftovers for Celesteela, gonna prove a little bit useful here. You imagine Gyarados might want to come in on this Nihilego slot, let it go down, but more importantly, just neutralize the physical attack of Arcanine and Garchomp, make sure that Celesteela can survive for an extra turn. But Eric is trying to waste out this Tailwind here, and with Tapu Koko still in the back, once Tailwind goes down, it will be the fastest Pokemon again, and should be able to start throwing out some big damage. But he just needs to be able to position himself in such a way. Celesteela is so heavily threatened here by Arcanine and Garchomp. If he switches anything in, it probably will be knocked out here. So a really interesting turn for Javier to be able to try and take a knockout and level up the Pokemon count.
Definitely, it's all about stalling out that Tailwind for Eric at the moment, I believe. Nihilego leaving the field, going to save that maybe later to threaten down the Arcanine, and we see Gyarados once again come back onto the field. Going to get the Intimidate off onto Garchomp, which is going to be really good there. Garchomp never likes having its attack lowered. And we see Garchomp go once again for a Rock Slide. Does connect on both Pokemon, does do good damage on Gyarados, but not enough to pick up the KO there. Arcanine goes for a Flare Blitz. This has got to be targeting down that Celesteela. It connects, it does huge amount of damage, taking it down to into the yellow health. Arcanine doing a little bit of damage to itself from recoil. Celesteela not going to be flinched this time by a Rock Slide. It's powered through and it's going to Leech Seed into that Arcanine, putting itself in the position that Celesteela loves to be in, with its leftovers going off and Leech Seed as well.
Yeah, so with the additional help from the healing here, that's really nice. And Gyarados being able to come in and intimidate both Arcanine and Garchomp in this position, surviving that rock slide was very, very useful. Tailwind has 1 turn left, so you'd imagine that Celesteela will want to protect here just to put that Arcanine into, it's going to activate the berry whatever happens with the Leech Seed, but put itself in a position where it's going to have as much health as it possibly can. Gyarados really smartly switching out here to preserve that Intimidate for later.
Really good choice there by Eric to bring switch out the Gyarados, brings back in the Tapu Koko. Electric Terrain's going to go across the field once again, so even though Tapu Koko is threatened by that Garchomp, it is at -1 thanks to the Gyarados switching in before. Celesteela goes for Protect, not wanting to take any damage, and Garchomp goes for a Swords Dance, so going to boost itself up to +1 going into the next turn, and Arcanine goes for another Flare Blitz, so this is actually going into the Tapu Koko slot, so it's just going to do some good damage on there, does about a third, and it manages to proc its Super Berry, so Arcanine, thanks to that that Flare Blitz recoil, is going to get 50% of its health back.
Yeah, so the berry activating here is really nice for Arcanine, just allows it to stick around for an extra turn, but has to take some Leech Seed damage for itself. The Garchomp setting up the Swords Dance here, knowing that the Pokemon on Eric's side of the field were facing a lot of damage coming into this. And Tapu Koko now in a position where it could get a Dazzling Gleam off onto this Garchomp if it can survive this turn. But you imagine, like, maybe this is a bait to get the Earthquake from Garchomp and the Protect from Arcanine, and so Gyarados can come in once again and get another Intimidate off onto these Pokemon. So Tapu Koko could be switching out just to do that once again, and Gyarados might be cheeky enough to be able to survive another turn and waste the Tailwind that way.
That would definitely be a really cheeky play coming out there from Eric. Obviously, if the Garchomp does go for the Earthquake, we have seen it's now not a choiced item or anything like that, as it did use the Swords Dance. It would then have no damage on Eric's side of the field with Gyarados and Celesteela there, so that would be a really, really good move from Eric if he was to go for that.
Yeah, and then Tapu Koko, Tapu Koko leading the field now, Gyarados coming in once again to drop that Intimidate, so that's Garchomp back down to neutral here, and Arcanine down to like -2 now, I think. So really heavily neutered here, and then the two Pokemon that have Eric has in the back, the Nihilego and the Tapu Koko, will be faster than all the other options on Javier's side of the field.
Arcanine going for the Protect there, which does suggest that Garchomp is going for the Earthquake, which it does do, not going to be doing any damage onto Eric's side of the field there, as Celesteela goes for a Heavy Slam, going to do some damage to Garchomp there, but not enough to pick up the KO. But that was just a phenomenal switch there from Eric. You called it there, Jay, and Eric delivered.
Yeah, so a really nice switch in for the Gyarados here, very, very cheeky, able to get nice Intimidate down and just take no damage this turn, which is really, really good. And Garchomp sticking around for an extra turn, not too much of a problem here. So Gyarados does what it needs to do. Maybe we might see a Protect from Celesteela and Gyarados just going down here so that Eric can get the free switch into one of his two faster Pokemon in the back, with the option of Nihilego or Tapu Koko coming in, Arcanine being so heavily threatened, and Tapu Fini being the last Pokemon on Javier's side of the field. Tapu Koko in a lovely position to start dealing some nice damage.
Definitely, and as you said, Arcanine was heavily threatened. It has decided to leave the field, and we see Tapu Fini join us once again. Garchomp here goes for Rock Slide, so it is going to connect on both these Pokemon. Will pick up the KO on Gyarados, so no more Intimidates coming up from Eric's side of the field. There's a critical hit there as well, but I don't believe that mattered all too much. And Celesteela, oh, it looks like Celesteela was flinched there, so once again, Garchomp doing what Garchomp and Rock Slide do best and picking up some flinches.
Yeah, Rock Slide's nasty. Like, it can be really horrible when you're in a position where Garchomp is faster than you, but now we have something faster than Garchomp which can threaten it as well. Nihilego with so little health remaining, it has to target the right Pokemon here. So if it goes into Garchomp, it sets it up so that Tapu Koko can come in later on and do some massive damage without fear of Earthquake, but it could just take, Garchomp could Protect, and then Tapu Fini could get a big School off into this slot. Celesteela might want to go for a double target with Nihilego into that Tapu Fini, but what if Arcanine comes in?
That's a very good point. If Arcanine comes in here, things could go very, very different. Garchomp does go for the Protect there, and Nihilego, calling that Protect, goes straight into the Tapu Fini with the Sludge Bomb and does pick up the KO there. So excellent call there from Eric, reading that Garchomp was going to Protect, goes and gets the KO on the Tapu Fini. Unfortunately, it will get KO by its own Life Orb though. Yes,
so the Life Orb really making dividends. It means that Tapu Fini could not survive the Sludge Bomb. All the additional damage output from that Life Orb, really, really nice there for Eric's side of the field. Garchomp now going to be threatened by this Tapu Koko. Tapu Koko coming in, being able to do some super effective damage if it's got access to Dazzling Gleam to knock out the Garchomp here. And Arcanine coming in, it is unintimidated now, so that's good for it. And it will be able to threaten damage onto either the Tapu Koko or the Celesteela here. It'd be interesting to see how much damage this Flare Blitz will do onto that Tapu Koko.
Indeed, we've seen so many times with this Arcanine, it's been dealing out all these powerful Flare Blitzes, but not at the power that it wants to be able to, thanks to all of Gyarados' Intimidates. So it'll be interesting to see which target it's going to go down into here, and whether Tapu Koko does have that Dazzling Gleam, which means it would be able to pick up the KO on that Garchomp, which does obviously threaten it so heavily.
Yeah, so really key turn here. So if it has Dazzling Gleam, it can pick up the knockout onto Garchomp and put Arcanine into range for a possible Thunderbolt knockout the next turn. So Eric, will he go for the big play here and try and drop that Dazzling Gleam if he has it? Celesteela obviously super threatened by this Arcanine, unable to switch out here. So it's going to be a big turn. There's going to be some massive damage dealt here.
Definitely will be, and obviously Celesteela being really heavily threatened by that Arcanine, but it does just, I think, come down to this Tapu Koko, whether it does have Dazzling Gleam or not. Arcanine does go for a Protector, doesn't want to take any damage this turn. And we see the Tapu Koko, it goes for a Dazzling Gleam, going to pick up the KO onto that Garchomp. And this just puts Eric in such a tremendous position going into this next turn of the game. Yeah, you saw the handshake come out from both players here, and a smile as well, and that's really great. I mean, both players have played each other before, they know each other really well, and it's great. Yeah, it's great to see people enjoying the matchup, and it was a very, very good game of Pokemon to watch. Tapu Koko now in such a strong position to be able to throw out a Thunderbolt into that Arcanine. Arcanine will be unable to answer it with a knockout, even if it does knock out the Tapu Koko, or go for the Celesteela. There'll be additional damage next turn, so it's a tough corner for Javier to turn around in, and he's just going to forfeit instead. Definitely, but you can see on the screen there, both players, I love the camaraderie that you have here at Pokemon. They're both sort of cheering each other on.